My relationship with my Ukrainian host grandfather was it was uncomfortable right from the moment we met, but it didn't get genuinely weird until both of us were totally naked. After college, I moved overseas to teach English for 2 years in Kazakhstan. And for the first few months, I had a host family, a Ukrainian host family. And I really wanted them to like me. I wanted them to take me in as like the son they never had. And so there were 3 members of this family that I had to win over. First and foremost was my host mom, Tanya. She was this little pixie of a Ukrainian woman. And she had no children of her own, but she had very maternal instincts. And she looked about my mom's age. She wasn't. She was like 3 years older than me. But she looked the part. And she had this really sweet golden smile, both figuratively and literally. I think 3/4 of her teeth were gold. But she taught me to, she took me in, she taught me to make Russian dumplings. She made sure I washed my feet every night before bed, which for years I thought was a thing. And so that was great. We had a great relationship. The other 2 people in the family were her parents. They lived about an hour away in a rural village, in a little Russian dacha, 1-room house with a big garden attached. And we would go see them every weekend. Tanya's mother was Baba Nina, and Baba Nina was just this freight train of a Soviet woman. And yeah, she was always cooking, which usually meant just boiling the flavor and texture out of whatever vegetables she had. But whenever I arrived and she saw me, she would drop whatever she was doing and throw her arms around me and just smother me in her chest as if I had just returned unexpectedly from the German front. It was just, she adored me, and I loved it. But it was the 3rd member of the family that I had the problem with, and that was Tanya's father, Dядя Boris, Grandpa Boris. Dядя Boris only communicated through grunts and mumbles. He was the spinning image in like size, texture, and personality as a sack of potatoes. He was a man who'd been like just beaten down by a rough Soviet life. And I think he didn't want some capitalist American coming in and swooping away with his daughter. And he wanted nothing to do with me, it seemed like. He was always criticizing me. And we would spend hours together every single Saturday. And it was always doing the same thing. For hours on end, we would peel potatoes. I don't know what happened to these potatoes. It was like this weird Greek tragic myth like Sisyphus or something where you're eternally on KP duty just peeling potatoes. But we would sit there, we'd peel quietly every 20 minutes or so. He'd pour us a big shot of vodka and we'd throw it back and chase it with a raw garlic clove. And the only communication we had was for him to complain about me. And he would criticize. He's like, you cut off too much potato when you clean. You throw food away. And he would complain that I threw up after 6 shots of vodka. Or honestly, it might have just been the 6 garlic cloves, because either one is not going to treat you well. And it's on one of these days that we're just peeling potatoes all day, and he's complaining about me, and he's criticizing and shaking his head. And towards the end of this day, Tanya and her mom come home, and Tanya says, Keith, would you like to go to the Russian banya, the Russian sauna? And I've heard that the sauna, the banya is a magical, intense experience. And I think, you know what, anything to get away from Dядя Boris sounds great. So I say, yeah, that would be nice. And she says, good, Dядя Boris will take you. There's not really any way for me to get out of this. Okay, so fine. And they have this sauna attached to the house. Like, you go through a little broom closet and it's there. And so Dядя Boris gets up and he goes and he starts stoking the fire with wood, and he's coming back and forth. And then he's in that little broom closet. He just kind of pokes his head out. He just looks at me and he goes. So I'm like, okay, I come in, and I'm pretty sure we're supposed to get naked, but I'm not positive. So I'm doing it slowly. I've got like my socks off. I've folded them. And I turn around and he's already naked. I don't know if he's wearing like Velcro clothing and he just kind of jumped out. But he's ready to go. And he's annoyed that it's taking me so long. Hurry up, fire's getting cold. And so I take off my clothes quickly. He opens the door and just says, go inside. So I walk inside, and I'll tell you, it wasn't getting cold because it was so hot. I had enough that you can't breathe through your nose. It just burns too much. So I'm like covering my mouth as I breathe in. I'm trying to avoid the nails coming out of the floor. And I sit down on the bench, and he sits down next to me. And I just try and relax and enjoy it. But I can't, because all I can hear is, ah! like I'm listening to a house settle next to me. And we're only in there for a minute or so before he says, stand up. And so I do, because I'm afraid of him. And so I do, and he stands up, and he walks right up to me, like looks right at me, like we're a couple boxers squaring off. And he's standing close. I mean, he's standing really close. He's standing close up, like our junk is sniffing each other like a couple of dogs. And he says, turn around. And I say, sorry? He says, turn around. So I say, okay. And I turn around. And when I do, I swear to God, he kicks my legs apart and he pushes his hand on my back. So I have to bend down and grab onto the bench. And I start to wonder where I'm going to draw the line on cultural sensitivity. Realistically, I know this is not going where it looks like it's going. I just can't imagine where else it's going. And I look over my shoulder, and he's in the corner reaching into a bucket, and he pulls out this long, knotty rope, and I don't know where that's going. But I just turn back and I grab onto that bench with everything I've got. I just gotta wait for that welcome to Kazakhstan moment. And then he comes up behind me, and he starts using the rope on my back. Not like a loofah, more like he's genuinely trying to saw me in half. But then he starts working like the knots into the knots in my back, and it is intense, and it is so alleviating. And he's working out like stressors from like 20 years ago, and it's intense. Like I'm moaning, it's like an exorcism for me. I am making some weird sounds, and I don't even care because I am loving this. This is fantastic. But by the end of it, like I just want to collapse and have a cigarette or something. So I sit back down on the bench, and then he sits down next to me, and I look over at him, and he's got his head turned away from me, and I can't really figure out why. And I'm looking over, and then I realize he's laughing. He's laughing at me, and he doesn't want me to see this. He doesn't want me to see this side of him. He doesn't see that as his role in the family. So he finally just slowly, he collects himself, and then he sits back down, and he slaps me on the back, and he says, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. And then we just sit there in silence for a few minutes before we get out. And for those couple of minutes, I could not have felt more like a member of the family. Thanks.